My first question is, if you were going to design the structure for a new innovative startup company, what kind of structure would you try to create in regard to level of complexity, formalization, and centralization? Why would you set up this type of structure? For my response, if I were going to design the structure for a new innovative startup company, I would use a very simple and not complex system. Additionally, the formalization would be mostly informal, and the centralization would be there for upper management only. The mostly informal formalization would, however, include dressing up in a suit and tie, because the company would need to look professional, in my opinion. I think, though, the actual act of being formal through practices and communication would create less focus away from the actual business content. Especially in a new organization, it is more important to focus on the actual business rather than on talking and sounding professional. Like, the content matters more. Wearing professional clothes, in my opinion, doesn't distract employees away from the actual business because they don't need to think about closing the job. You do that beforehand, I think totally fine. I think employees should wear professional clothes but act informally. I would use a very simple structure in the business because I want for employees to not have any chance of feeling lost in the operations of the business. I want them to know where to go and be very upfront and straightforward. They shouldn't having to play Where's Waldo with who do I contact and all that. It should be very simple. The simple structure would consist of a hierarchy with clearly defined roles, although for the most part, everyone would be in the same kind of area, it was some kind of a hierarchy because it would be pretty small. Pretty much upper management, like maybe like a person or two, would be in control just for some direction. The centralization would only be there for upper management because I would want for people to have direction. Besides the very high level of upper management, I would have the rest be decentralized for efficiency. Like, the business should focus on the actual business, not on sounding professional. In a startup, developing and scaling is way more important than in a traditional business. There needs to be direction, but not attention to total control. For my next question, think about the technological changes that have occurred since you were born. Do you think those changes have affected the strategic planning process? How? For my response, I think the technological changes that have occurred since I was born have affected the strategic planning process because companies now are more efficient and can afford to cut more cost. For example, instead of a company putting more time and effort into market research with physical customer questions, like going up to the customer and asking them for their opinion physically, companies can now get customer responses with the click of a computer. Another example is of how a company can now spend less on taxes because they can store records digitally on an Excel worksheet rather than on a large stack of physical papers that would also be a storage problem and cost the company more space. These changes in cost and time makes the strategic planning process more focused on the actual business and less on these necessary costs that occur outside the primary scope of the business, like taxes and that sort of thing.